Hey y'all, I'm gonna drop the link. So if anybody wants to come up so we can get started. Remember, you don't have to show your face. When the music came on, you jumped. Sorry. Remember, you don't have to show your face, but I do need to verify. So I need to see you backstage, but I won't. You can be on a blank screen coming up. If you want to come up and join me, come on. You're still working. I understand. You're still working. Okay, I see you back. You can go on blank screen if you want to. Okay, babe. Got you. All right. Anybody want to come up? Feel free to join us. Do you have another window open back? Make sure you have all your windows closed. You just got caught up with the reading. Hey, Danny, I know you working, babe. I know you would love to come on. I know you would. Danny's probably read Indigo as many times as I have, if not more.
Is it still echoing?
Let me see. Say something.
Hi.
Nope, you're good. You're good. It just seemed like it was a noise. I wasn't sure if it was another window open or something like that. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'll just keep dropping the link periodically if anybody wants to come up and join us. Miss BAP 0485 is in the house, y'all. Thank you for coming up and joining me. I think Evie's still
discuss this book because I liked it a lot.
You did? So are you done? You already read the whole thing?
I didn't mean to.
Listen, I understand. I understand. It is a page turner and it is hard to stop. It's been hard for me to stop myself because I've read the book before. I mean, obviously more than once. But I haven't read it in a couple of years. So I remember most of the story, but some of it I don't remember everything. And as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. And so it's been hard for me, even when I'm giving the synopsis, the little chapter synopsis, it's been hard for me not to say something that I didn't already read. But okay, Patty, no problem. We're gonna be on here for about an hour. Okay. We're gonna be on here for about an hour. So I see you, Xavier. You can go black screen, babe. I see you now.
I think I've read about 5 of her books now.
Oh, so have you read her books before, or you went after?
Yeah, I went after.
Oh wow! So what other books have you picked up?
The Destiny series. And the other ones I can't remember the name of.
The Destiny series are one of the newer ones. That's one of those ones. I think the third installment of the Destiny series I think came out in either 2019 or 2020. But okay. That's a good series as well. You know what I love about, hey Xavier, welcome, baby. You there, Xavier? Can you hear us? I think Xavier trying to get his sound together. We're gonna give him a minute. Hold on. So the thing I love about her books is that not only does she give us the history, but she gives us that rich history. Like she lets you know. Okay, we heard you just now, Xavier, but we heard some music or something. But she lets you know that there was just Wild Rain just came out this month. Okay, y'all. So her newest book, Wild Rain, it just came out this month. So y'all listen, when we get done with Indigo, y'all run out and get it. That'll definitely be the next book I'll be downloading on my Kindle. So, I mean my Audible. So we're not going to talk past chapter 9 today because I said that's where we were going to be. I know some of y'all went further, but we're going to just talk about. Okay, Xavier, you ready now, babe? Okay, I can. If you can hear me, Xavier, I can't hear you. So just let us know when you're ready. No problem. Just when you get it, when you figure it out. So I'll drop the link one more time and then we'll get started. So what about, okay, so let's start from the beginning. The book opens up with Hester waiting for her cargo. And so we are introduced to the fact, well, no, I take that back. I rewind. The book actually, it opens up with the prologue. Yeah, we're not going to go past chapter 9. No, please don't speak on anything that happened. Now, chapter 9 ends with Galen inviting Hester Foster and his new wife to dinner. So we're not going to speak past that. Okay, so that's what we're leaving off. The first part starts with a series of letters between Hester's dad and her aunt Catherine. Right. She always has these prologues. She always has these great prologues and epilogues. She always gives you an epilogue and a prologue. How did you feel when you first read that back in reference to him, this man giving up his freedom for love? Like, how did that read to you when you first read it?
I think it was a noble thing to do, I guess, but I don't think he realized how harsh the realities of slavery were, you know?
Absolutely.
So he gave up freedom for love, but I don't think he really knew what he was putting himself into.
Absolutely. And we realized, I mean, I'm jumping ahead, but not outside of the 9 chapters. We find out later on that her grandfather was actually gifted land in exchange for fighting in the Revolutionary War. And this is something I think I've said on my channel before, and I know I've said to my students, history will have you believe that Black people didn't fight until World War II. But Black people have fought in every war that this country has ever had, going all the way back to the Revolutionary War, working forward. So it you know, so I'm appreciative that she included that. And you saw even the slave catcher Israel Shoe talking about something. What are you talking about? Ain't no, you know, nigga fought in no war. Like, what is wrong with you? He ain't never fought in no war. And it was so unbelievable for him, you know. So I agree. He did it for love, but not understanding all of the intricacies of slavery, even down to her mother marking her just in case she was sold away from them so that they may be able to have an identifying mark. And in Hester's case, her mother cut off part of her the tip of her pinky finger. And that's something that was a common practice in slavery. They would cut a part of the earlobe off. They would put a mark somewhere on the body. That was a very common practice because the reality in slavery is that your children could be sold away from you at any moment's notice. And so that was something that actually that's valid. He was very naive and thought it was work. Yeah. And I think maybe he also might have been fooled into thinking eventually the guy would let them go. Maybe eventually he would give in and let me, you know, and let me be free and then take my wife with me. Because he did offer to buy her and he wouldn't sell. He offered to buy her, you know. So then we get into the beginning and we see Hester. We fast forward to Hester now living in Michigan. And she's getting this cargo. So she gets a family. And then she finds out that there's another passenger who was really badly injured. And that ends up being the Black Daniel, who is known, like people knew Harriet Tubman, you know, the Black Moses on the Underground Railroad. He was very well known, had a heavy price on his head, and he was ambushed and was almost killed.
Yeah.
So, anything you want to add as I go through? Anything you want to add?
Just drawing back to the prologue where you were saying that people pretended like there weren't any Black people that fought in wars up until the World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They just basically erased people like Crispus Attucks and people who literally fought and died for this country.
Right.
And as far as the oh no, you're fine. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, as far as the dad, I think he made the mistake of not realizing that those people who owned slaves to a point weren't just regular humans, you know? They aren't decent people. They actually thought they had a right to own other people.
Right. They didn't think of us as human. They didn't think of us as real people. Absolutely. Right, he was way too overzealous. A knee-jerk reaction, absolutely. Your knee-jerk reaction was disbelief. Absolutely. I mean, when you read the book in the beginning, it's like, come on now, that's crazy. Who would do? Oh, sorry, sorry, Xavier, you turned your camera on, sweetie. I'm sorry. Let me know when you're ready, Xavier. Put it in the private chat when you're ready. I don't want to bring you on. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Yeah, it's just absolutely disbelief. Absolutely disbelief. And even when you were talking about Crispus Attucks, the thing with that is, even with when people tell the story of Crispus Attucks, they will have you believe. Okay, hold on. Let me see what he's saying. Okay, you ready? Can you hear us now, Xavier?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. All right. Sorry about that, sweetheart. Sorry about the camera slip. I didn't realize you would go come on camera. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had to switch to my phone.
Oh, no problem. So even with the story of Crispus Attucks, they will have you believe that was a one-time thing, that was
right.
an anomaly.
It was an anomaly.
Right. And that there weren't whole soldiers in the Revolutionary War that fought, for George Washington, and some that fought on the other side, that fought for the king, Right. So Xavier, we were talking about this at the beginning. Right. They're black Tories. Absolutely they were. Absolutely they were.
Fight for their freedom.
Exactly. And that's what they would even tell them. The king even told slaves, if you fight on the side of the king, when we win the war, we will free you. So there were people who fought on the side of the king, who ran away, fought on the side of the king in anticipation that they would become free when the war was over. Because who thought that those Americans was going to beat the king? Like, nobody thought that they were going to actually win the war. So, what do you think, Xavier?
I'll have to say this is my first time reading a book like this, which is not only set in slavery, but also like a romance. So I was definitely intrigued by it. And I'm also liking the history of it. And I like the order, the mentionings of the order. Initially, I'd never heard of something like that. And at first, I didn't really think it was real. But it seems like it was. And I find it interesting that, well, going back to the beginning, that the father sold himself and didn't try to like buy the mom. And I guess maybe because he couldn't, because the original owner wouldn't sell to a black man, I guess. But I guess it just seems like the father and the mother's relationship seems to be very apparent to Hester, and at first it didn't seem like it was, but now that we're getting towards like the seventh chapter, I think, where she mentions how she feels about love, I think that's an interesting concept to think about, because she mentions how she doesn't want children, how she doesn't want to fall in love, and I think that's mainly because of the relationship between her parents, and I find that very interesting.
That I found, yes, that is interesting as well, to see her warped sense on love. Like she said, I've never seen love really work out. I mean, look at my dad. He gave up his freedom for love, and because she didn't grow up seeing her parents, she never saw whether they were really in love, whether it was worth it, whether the marriage worked out. All she knows is, my father had all of this. He had this land. He had a little bit of money. He had a business. Later on, she talks about how he had an orchard of over 200 trees, and how he had a little bit of money and everything. And he gave all of that up for love. She talks about how her aunt had unrequited love. Her and the guy, they loved each other for 30 years, but he didn't want to violate his vows to his wife, who was still in slavery. And so, so for her, love was just, it wasn't real. It wasn't something that was real. And so, yeah, that's interesting too. Say that again.
Wasn't tangible.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good way of saying that. It wasn't tangible. Yeah. So we meet a few characters, and I'm going to mention a few people that we meet along the way. We meet B, who is B Meldrum, who is sort of like the town doctor. She sends for her to come and mend him up because he had a lot of wounds. We meet Mr. Wood, who was a Quaker, and if anybody knows anything about the Quakers were 100% against slavery, and there were a lot of Quakers who were abolitionists and part of the Underground Railroad.
Right.
And like Xavier brought up the order, when you read about all of these different orders and you read about all of these different organizations that were valid. If the one thing you'll learn about Beverly Jenkins is when she gives you history and she gives you years and she gives you specific names, that's usually something she has found through her research. And those are the real people. Because again, you're getting a history lesson as you're reading through these books as well. Now, the first impression that the Black Daniel we have of the Black Daniel is that he's big, he's strong, he's mulatto. He's described as mulatto, and we know that he speaks French. And somebody put in my comments, and I don't remember who it was. Was it you, Below? Somebody put in my comments, I think he's Creole.
Mm-hmm.
And he
I think
absolutely is. He's from Louisiana, and he is Creole. Stubborn and determined are some of the other words because
now.
You said what?
That makes sense now because I thought that he was from like an actual mulatto, like black mom, white dad. That's what I thought initially.
Yeah. Well, as we read further, we'll get more information about his background, but within the first 9 chapters, we do get that information. All right, I'm bringing you on. Hey, how you doing? Well, within the first 9 chapters, we do get that information. All right. Oh, close the other window, babe. Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Okay, you got to close your other tab.
Is it good now?
Yeah, you sound I can hear myself echoing. Okay, how you doing? Welcome, joining the conversation.
Thank you.
Moya, right?
Yes, perfect.
See, boom, I got it. What do you want to add to the conversation? We're still in the first chapter, child. We try to get out of chapter.
Yes, regarding the first chapter with to go back to the prologue, I just thought that when I say my heart broke, just to know how hard it is for a mother to put harm to their own child, but that just make me disheartening and sad because no good mother wants to harm their child. Right. But to do that, to feel like you have to do that to identify your child just so they can have a better future for you, I was like, that was just heartbreaking for me.
And it was another book I read who Sharon Draper, you guys may not be familiar with Sharon Draper. Sharon Draper writes a lot of young adult fiction. And she wrote a book called, oh Lord, now I'm not going to remember the name of the daggone book. Oh, shoot. I'll get you guys the name of the book. But it's sort of like a female roots. It's about a little girl. The book starts off, she's in Africa, and they're going through this ritualistic ceremony, and their tribe is sort of invaded. And then it goes from there. We go through the whole Middle Passage and all of that. And there's a point in the book where one of the characters, she cuts the tip of the earlobe off of her son specifically for that reason. And again, so it's something that you see over and over in these types of books because it actually happened. It was something that really happened. So let's fast forward a little bit so we can get out of chapter 1. So chapter 1, essentially, we find out, I'm going to read y'all my summary. The Black Daniel has arrived. We know that Hester has become a conductor. We find out that Aunt Catherine has passed away a few months earlier. We meet Mr. Wood. We meet B, and he is injured, yet he is determined. He's already trying to walk. He doesn't want to take any pity, and he actually is not happy. He's not happy to be in the situation. You can tell he's a very independent person. So we get into chapter 2, and in chapter 2, he starts talking a little bit. We learn about the Wesleyites, who are also abolitionists, but they were abolitionists for money. They wanted to make money off of it, but they did it. And
you can't say that they sometimes caught people and resold them and freed them again.
Right, because they was gonna make some money. But they said, well, we're going to rescue you again. We just going to make a little bit of money off of it first. Okay. Child. Right. It's a mess. But again, so we find out that Hester is marked which is where we get the name of the book from. Her hands and her feet are indigo, the color of indigo, because when she was sold to the indigo plantations in South Carolina. And that's where the slaves would use their hands. The kids would use their feet. And when they got old enough, they would use their hands to dye the material and things like that. And it was, so her hands were marked. And she would always be marked a slave, she was told.
Now that part, I just don't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
Go ahead.
That part stuck with me because that's where my dad's side of my family is from. Mm-hmm. And I never knew about the stained hands and feet and stuff, you know. And so I imagine my dad's people with the stained hands and things like that. It's interesting.
Yeah, and again, you may have more information that you can share with us, because as many times as I've read this book, I haven't really gone and done the research, but I'm sure there's some validity to it. Because again, I knew about the indigo plantations. I knew that they planted rice and things like that, but I just never clicked in my head that they would dye their hands blue. Yeah. Now the other book that I'm talking about, and I'm gonna find the name of that book, they talked about the rice plantations and how horrible it was working on the rice plantations. They talked about how they would lose a lot of slaves to snake bites and things like that because they were in the swamps because of the way you make rice, because the way you grow. I mean, you grow rice in the swampy lands and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that was, when you read through that, you read the numbers of slaves that were just killed. And they would just, you know, like, okay, well, he died of a snake bite. Okay, you know, water moccasins, they would get them. And gators. They had the gators down there too, child. All right. Okay, so he also shares with Hester that he was betrayed by someone who lived in Whitaker, where she lives. And she was like, oh, hell no. Nah. Anybody around here betray you, sir? And he was like, but yes, they did. And we find that she didn't want to believe it, but she did have a meeting with the Detroit Ladies Abolition Circle. She had a meeting with the circle, and she was sharing with the ladies what he had told her. And who shows up at the door but the Sheriff Lawson? And this is where we find her running with Ezra Shue. Yeah. We find out that Sheriff Lawson, although is a white man, he is very sympathetic to the free Black community, and he would not let Ezra be as nasty as he could have been. He did have to allow him to search the home because of the Fugitive Slave Act, which she does a good job of explaining all of that in the book. It allowed certain things to take place, so he couldn't stop them from searching because they were looking for a slave, i.e. the Black Daniel. I mean, I'm sorry, he wasn't a slave, but they were looking for the Black Daniel. But something that she said that I thought was very interesting was she realized how ignorant he was and how he wasn't going to look for anything past what he could see, because he couldn't even believe that Black men fought in the war. So he certainly couldn't conceive of a Black man building a home specifically meant for the Underground Railroad. So he would his eyes would go right past certain clues that might, that he might, he wouldn't look too deep. He wouldn't look too deep. And we find out how intricate this house is built later on. But Ezra is described as very, stank and nasty and, teeth rotting out and just a nasty guy.
Which I found was ironic because as soon as he saw how nice the area was, he was like, oh, did a white person build this for you or have these nice things? But come here, you're a white person and you have low hygiene and they're not taking care of yourself. So I just found that was very ironic.
Exactly. He couldn't conceive of a Black person having anything nice, but hell, he didn't have nothing nice. I mean,
and that's how that typically goes. Like with today, you have the people like the former president using people who are ignorant and poor to go ahead and do his dirty work.
What were you gonna say, Xavier? Okay, I thought Xavier had said something. That's what's funny is when I don't want to go off on my history rant, but when you look at it and you look at organizations like the Klan and stuff like that, those was a lot of that was started by those good old boys. They weren't started by the elite, because the elite, the people with the money, they have other ways of fighting. It was started by the people who had to go to school with black kids and live in the same neighborhoods as black families. They were the ones that wanted this separation, because remember, if you had money, you weren't living. You were already away. You already were separated. You know, your money separated you, and so that's interesting. Again, that's a whole, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That's a whole nother thing. I'm reading the chat, so let me go through some of the comments on the chat before we move into the next chapter. Bilo and Patty Duke were talking about the boycotting. We find out about the free produce, where they didn't buy products that were made by slaves. So some went without sugar, or if they did get sugar, they had to get sugar that was imported. Same thing with the cotton. They wouldn't buy cotton from the South. They would have to buy imported cotton. And sometimes it wasn't as good quality, but they sacrificed their comfort to further the cause. Like, you know, if they're not making, they start making so much money off of it, maybe, you know, in our own little way, we can help. And they use syrup and honey instead of sugar in a lot of places. And again, that's something I didn't know anything about that until I read Indigo the first time. I was like, I never even thought of that. You know what I mean? I never even thought about people in the North saying, well, we're not going to use products that come from the South. Never thought of it. It never occurred to me. We're going to move into chapter 3. Anybody want to add? I see we have a few more people in the room. I'll drop the link. Feel free to come up if you want to join the conversation. The only you do not have to show your face, but I do have to verify you backstage before I bring you on. But you do not have to show your face on screen, on camera. All right. But if you want to come on, there's the link. I see we got a few more people coming in the room. All right. Anybody want to add anything before we move into chapter 3? All right. So as we move into chapter, we find out about, I think we already talked about Foster, her fiance. We find out that she is actually engaged to Foster. We'll find out more about Mr. Foster in a few chapters, honey. And we also are finding out that Galen eats a lot. Okay, well, we found out his name is Galen.
He's trifling.
I know Xavier has feelings about Mr. Forrester, honey. But the Black Daniel's name is Galen, or Galliano. I hope I said that right. He's starting to heal. The stitches are getting better. He's getting a little more irritable. And him and Hester start having these back and forths, honey. Hey, Sparkle, that's right, Tribe. Y'all the Tribe 2.0, honey. He's the Tribe 2.0. And we see them going back and forth, and she seems to be able to give as good as she got. You know, she seems to be able to give a little bit, and you know, when he rubs her, she can rub him back a little bit, and he's timing enough for her. We find out about. Did I skip the meeting at the church? Hold on, let me make sure I didn't skip it yet. No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think we got there yet. So he tells her the story of the ambush. He tells her what actually happened, and they come to find out that he was moving the family that originally came. And they were ambushed on their way to the next stop, and they were going to actually compromise the woman, the man's wife in the group, and Galen gave himself up as sacrifice so that they would not take her into the woods and rape her, which is what they wanted to do. And so they proceeded to beat him. That's where he got stabbed and he was beaten. He was run over, his leg was run over by the wagon. That's how he hurt his ankle so bad. And one of the slave catchers told him, before the Wesleyites came along and rescued him, told him, you have a snake in your garden in Whitaker. And so that's where he's determined that there is somebody here that's a traitor. And Hester believes his story, but she just can't believe that one of her neighbors, somebody that she trusts, would do that. You know. They end up having a meeting at the church. And again, when you see this, I'm reminded about the cleverness. I think it was Patty Duke that wrote in my comments about the cleverness of the slaves. Well, these were freed people. They would use a different color cloth when B would deliver her eggs, and then that would tell you whether there was a meeting and then it would be written on the cloth what time the meeting was going to be and all of that good stuff. And so we find out that they're meeting at the church, and Hester lets them know that she has the Black Daniel. She doesn't tell them more than what they need to know, but she does tell them that they have that the Black Daniel is staying at her home, and that he told her there's a traitor. What do you guys think about the traitor situation?
When I was first reading it, we haven't gotten to the meeting yet.
The meeting at the church?
Yeah.
Oh no, we're at the meeting at the church. Go ahead.
When they first talked about it and seeing the reaction that Lovejoy had to her, I was kind of thinking that the traitor was gonna be him.
Yeah, Lovejoy was very interesting, wasn't he?
Yep.
Anybody else?
I have no clue who it can be. I have a feeling it's going to be someone we least suspect. But regarding to Lovejoy, there was a lot of men throughout history who was in front of, the revolution, trying to get Black people our rights, but also downgraded women at the same time, which I found is very interesting. That has been, their mindset's been rooted since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I just find that interesting.
Yeah. Well, we're not, those of you who read ahead or who finished the book, we're not going to talk about, please don't put no spoilers. Don't put no spoilers for the people who don't know who the traitor is. It's funny because I remembered who the traitor was as I was reading. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I had to remember though. But please don't put it in the chat, you guys. Please don't put it in the chat. Okay, so that was the big thing of that chapter. I think that might have been Xavier that fell off. Was that Xavier that fell off, or was that Moya?
I'm still here.
Okay, then it was Xavier. Okay. So the other thing that we get in chapter 4 is he starts calling her Petite. That's one of his nicknames for her. He calls her Indigo. He calls her Petite. He calls everything but Hester, child. He don't call her Hester. And then we find out about her affinity for using vanilla as her perfume. She said she ain't spending no money on no real perfume. She gonna dab this little bit of vanilla on behind her ear and between her breasts, and she gonna call it a day. Y'all ever thought of using vanilla? As much as I love vanilla, I never thought of using vanilla as a perfume.
They think way further than I ever thought.
like the first time I read it, I said, you know what? Because now we use these natural products with vanilla and everything in it now. And it's funny, I never thought of it before. I'm like, oh my goodness, because one of the products I get from Nadia is the vanilla grapefruit. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And it's the oil, La Petite Indigo. Yep, that's his name for her.
Well, he would have got on my nerves with those nicknames.
He just don't want to call her Hester, child. He said, Hester is an ugly name. He don't like it. He said, Hester is a name for an old maid. I'm not calling you no Hester. Now, what's interesting is the first time he describes her, because his eye was still swollen up and he could barely see her, he described her as passable. She's passable. He never described her as ugly, but he described her as passable. But the more and more, he gets his vision back and all that good stuff, when he does finally describe her, he describes her how beautiful she is. And what's interesting is that she is dark-skinned. So we have this mulatto man who is falling in love with this dark-skinned woman, which I think is beautiful, especially when we start getting into this whole colorism, idea. I think that's a great visual for us. So he's feeling better, and we're moving him upstairs into the attic bedroom. And she shows him all of the escape routes throughout the house. Now, how y'all feel about that house, honey? That sounds like some old 007 stuff right there.
That house was ingenious. Again, they
past
anything I would have ever thought to do.
I mean, even to the point where her grandfather didn't build steps because he said it's easier to run down an incline than to try to run down steps. And I was like, you know what? He's right.
Right.
He's right.
Like, I need to be around these people because I apparently don't know how to plan anything. They thought of everything from A to Z and back to A.
Okay, A back to A, exactly. And the thing is, this stuff is real. The stuff is realistic. I remember in high school, I visited. We went on a trip to Savannah, Georgia. One of my good girlfriends is from Savannah, and there's a church there. It's one of the oldest, Black churches in the country. It's a church there, and there are holes in the floor of the church. And I remember going on a tour. I was in high school, so they may have found it in the time from high school till now. But as of when I was in high school, they knew or they suspected. I think it was even on Married to Medicine. When Married to Medicine went to Savannah, they went to that church. And they had confirmed that it was a stop on the Underground Railroad because the holes in the floor, they had pretty much confirmed that those were vents so that they could breathe. The slaves could breathe while they were down there because the church was built by slaves. But as of when I was in high school, they had yet to find the entrance. I mean, short of tearing up the floor, they couldn't find the hidden entrance. They couldn't find how to get into that area of the basement. And again, that was, however many years ago that I was in high school. They may have found it by now. But I just thought that, again, even if they still hadn't found it, that was still over 100 years since slavery, and they hadn't found it. And I just thought that's ingenious. So when you think about these things, like the church was built by slaves, so they specifically built it for the purposes of being able to help get slaves out.
Right. It's like we all made fun of Portia on Real Housewives for how much she didn't know. But it's like we really don't know the extent to which these people plan to get their freedom,
Exactly.
Right.
And I feel a part of the reason why it was also so successful is because white people didn't think we were that smart.
Right.
That's true. Brandon said, right, Danny said the same thing to Housewives because that's what Portia made her infamous Underground Railroad. Yeah, you're right. I remember now. You're right, child. I really think
I'm probably not of the people.
Right, of all people, right? Brandon, I really think it shows how clever and intelligent our people were. Absolutely. And I think that scene with Ezra Shue was a perfect example of because they did not think we were smart enough or did not give us the credit. We probably passed a whole lot of stuff under their noses that they just never saw because they didn't want to give us the credit for it. Right?
Right.
So, okay. So we find out about another local slave catcher, Greer. Rumor is that Ezra Shue is holed up with Greer for the winter. He ain't going nowhere no time soon because he is convinced that the Black Daniel is in his midst and he is not going anywhere anytime soon. My notes, this is the end of chapter 5, and my notes are church meeting, the egg codes, Galen moved upstairs, the escape route in the house, the guns. Oh, and she had a whole arsenal of guns. Y'all remember that part? Child had more guns.
And probably can shoot better than Lovejoy.
Okay, right. And she could shoot better than Lovejoy. Lovejoy wasn't trying to hear that, honey.
Everybody can better than Lovejoy.
Child, Lovejoy was but again, it shows you the craziness that you have a man here who's risking his life to free slaves, but still feels like women are inferior and beneath him. It's like, how do you even reconcile those two thoughts in your mind?
Because he knows he's inadequate.
Well,
you can't even shoot a gun, and you have these women in the railroad who can do more things than you. You focus that hatred towards them, but instead of focusing on improving yourself, maybe try to learn how to shoot the gun.
You're right. That's true.
Exactly.
All right. So we're moving into chapter 6. So Galen is noticing that Hester is not eating, and then he realizes that he is eating her out of house and home, and he gets upset. He tries to talk to her about her finances, and she shares, I'm sure, what she feels comfortable sharing with him in reference to her finances. And this is where he realizes how beautiful she is. And I underlined it, so I'm going to read it again. Her skin looked like the gift of an African night goddess, dark with the true colors of her ancestry. I just thought that was beautiful. I just thought the way that was worded was just gorgeous.
The way he set her down and made her eat was when I started to like
Poetic
him.
writing.
Yes, poetic writing. And yes, honey, he sat her down and made her eat. He was like, let me tell you what you're going to do, little girl. Okay? You are going to eat some food.
Right.
You're going to eat this food.
Right. Exactly. Like, he was like, don't you ever sacrifice for me. Don't do that. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be all right. That scene was so touching. I know, right? Then we got the bathtub scene, honey. Now, did that scene make y'all blush when she came in there and he was sitting in that tub and she was so squeamish, but she turned around, but she was still looking in the mirror, trying to get a glimpse.
It was so sweet.
It was scandalous, honey. It was scandalous. And it's funny, after coming off of Bridgerton, where
I want her to get in the tub with him.
I know, right? He invited her. Well, he didn't invite her, but he said,
"Oh, girl, you're gonna be done for."
Right, run, girl, run. But it was interesting after coming off of Bridgerton, and you saw how just the whisper that a young lady was caught unaccompanied in a courtyard with a man would have ruined her reputation. And then you see this and you like, but y'all seeing each other naked and stuff. Oh my goodness. I mean, of course, people didn't know what was really going on in that house, but they knew that man was in that house, honey. They knew that man was there. Chapter 7 gave you major Bridgerton vibes, girl. We getting there, honey. We almost there. So we find out in this chapter a couple of stories about Hester. We find out that she's really embarrassed about her blue hands because she was always told that would mark her a slave. She also has to be careful when she goes out in public to cover up her blue hands because it will tell on her. But privately, she's embarrassed by it. And then we hear the story about how her Aunt Catherine found her and how it took her Aunt Catherine many years, and I'm sure a lot of money, to eventually find her and bring her up north. And it was a whole cloak and dagger situation with, they had a speculator come in and buy her and then dropped her off at another guy's house. And then he took her up north and then he took her to Aunt Catherine. It was a whole cloak and dagger, but she kept her promise to her brother and found her brother's child. Right? How y'all feel about those two stories that we found out from the plantation?
If you ever seen the sorry.
Go ahead, Xavier. If you ever see the what? I think we lost.
If you've ever seen like the show Underground, that scene in the book reminded me of. You did?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I saw. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. No, we got you now. I think there's a delay though, but we got you
and
now.
That scene where Sam was. Okay. The scene where Sam talks about how his brother and told him after his first day in the fields, that kind of reminded me of the scene in the book where I think Dot told Ella and Hester about how shameful it was to have the blue hands, and it was their first time realizing that who they were, what their position was in life.
Right.
And I felt like that's so heartbreaking for a child to hear.
Yeah, because they were proud of it.
What I thought was fun is just really a sick joke.
Exactly, because Dot was proud of it. She was trying to make sure she wanted her hands to be as dark as her mom's. She wanted to look like her mom. And they had to tell her, this is nothing to be proud of. You don't want to look like me. You don't want your hands to look like mine. And you're right, Xavier. That was a sad moment for Dot. And as you're reading it, your heart breaks for Dot in that moment. Yeah, that's true. That is definitely true.
I think it also shows how innocent children are. And how they're going to be happy no matter what situation they're in. It's just like, when people are poor, children are poor, they don't know they're poor until someone tells them they're poor.
That is so true.
And it just continues to show you, how innocent youthfulness is.
Yeah. And I've heard that a million times. I love biographies and I love watching shows, biography type shows. And you hear people say that all the time. We didn't know we were poor. Like that's just how that's how we live. That's how everybody around us live. We didn't know we were poor. You know what I mean? We didn't know we were poor until we became an adult and realized, oh my goodness, I'm poor. You know, I grew up poor. And I think you're right. Like they didn't understand because that's all they ever knew. So they didn't understand it in the grand scheme of things. And it was a sad the innocence of the youth. You know what I'm saying? Children, you know, they're so innocent. They just don't see it. We also learn about Robert Purvis of the Philadelphia African Slavery Society. That's who took her to Catherine again. That's a real person. That's not a fictional character. That's a real person who really did those things. Again, I love how she infuses history. And for those of you who've read some of her other books, you know that she writes books during slavery. She writes books after slavery. She writes about spies during the Civil War. You know, she even writes about pirates. And, you know, again, it's a real thing, y'all. It's a real thing. Okay. So during chapter 6, also a wire is sent. Hester sends a wire for Galen. She knows it's a code, but of course she don't know what the code means or anything like that. But she sends the wire for him. And in chapter 7 is where somebody just said we have real Bridgerton vibes. Absolutely. Chapter 7, they go out on an all-day date. Galen begs her to go out. The house is closing in on him, and he wants to get out and get some fresh air. And he convinces her to play in the mud, and they make mud pies. He tells her, "You're too serious. You're taking life too serious. Have you ever played in mud and made mud pies?" And she was like, "Of course not." And this is another scene where he literally picks her up and forces her to do it. And it was a great day. He also finds Lovejoy's folly. Now, Lovejoy had built this big old house for his daughter to live in after she got married. And the daughter, the night before, ran away from home because she didn't want to marry who her father had picked out for her to marry, because she had actually fallen in love with the sheriff's son. But of course, the sheriff's son was was white, and she was black, and that's a romance that wasn't going to actually happen. How you guys feel about their day playing in the mud?
It was so cute.
It was cute, but it drastically showed the difference of their upbringing. Because Galen was able to have a more fun, youthful, childhood, versus Hester did not have that opportunity. She was one of those people who was not born to be as lucky as others. So of course, you think it's as simple as you never made mud pies, and to her, she was like, when will I have time to make mud pies?
Right.
Like I was in slavery and I was over here trying to free slaves. I ain't had time.
Right. I was a slave, and then when I wasn't a slave, I had to learn how to read and write and do all them things that you clearly took for granted. And it does, and it in that moment, it gives you another clue into Galen's history that we don't get we don't get until later on in the book, more of a background of his lifestyle, but we get clues dropped on us. We know that, he speaks French, we know that he had a childhood. He was able to actually have some sort of a childhood, Right. We read that he had been in love once. He did actually have a first love. We find out he doesn't get into the details, so that lets you know that there's a story there, because he don't really get into all the details of his first love. But you're right. That's a good point that I really didn't think about it like that. But you're right. That the fact that
excellent point
that lets you know that he had a childhood, which a lot of, especially slaves, were definitely not afforded. But even if you were free, you may not have had that life of luxury to enjoy a childhood to play in the mud. So that was a good point. That was a really good point. Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that perspective at all. I was just like, oh, this is a really cute scene.
Right. Exactly. And mud pies becomes, well, I don't want to tell y'all. We'll get there. Okay. So when they get back, honey, from playing in the mud, and they got to get washed up, Galen goes up to his room because, he's got the tub. That's the other thing, that the tub that he has in his room has actual indoor plumbing. It doesn't have a spigot. They still have to fill it up manually, but it has a drain. And again, that's an anomaly. That's something like, oh my goodness, you have indoor plumbing? Like this drains out. And it's definitely the tub itself, they described how extravagant the actual tub was and how her grandfather had gotten it through his travels, or her dad had gotten it through his travels. Okay. Sorry about y'all. Anybody else? Okay. So she decides that she's going to take her bath in the kitchen, where she always takes her bath, because she thinks that Galen is, they said their good nights, and, they flirted a little bit and all of that, but they said their good nights. And so she turned the candles down, and, filled up her tub, because she said, listen, it's warmer here in the kitchen. Hester's practical. Okay. She said, listen, he upstairs, he sleep. I'm going to take my bath. But of course, he walks in on her as she's getting out the tub, and you can almost see that scene in your head of her grabbing the towel and trying to hurry up real quick, and him taking his sweet ass time, closing his eyes and turning around, because he really liked what he see anyway. And she's embarrassed, and she puts on her nightgown, and then when he turns back around, he starts laughing at her, and he tells her that is the ugliest nightgown that he has ever seen in his life. Which wasn't very nice.
Right. It was funny until her reaction. I was so sad for her.
Right. You said Galen knew exactly what he was doing. I know, right? Because when she said she was getting ready to cry so bad, I said, "Oh wow, that's yeah." But then he gets very soft about it. He apologizes. He tells her that he will never ever hurt her again. He will never make her sad again. And he was very sorry. And baby, then he kisses her, honey. Got our first kiss, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then that kiss turns into some other things that I ain't gonna get into. You got to But he stops
like getting some action.
Right. But he stops.
Amazing things.
Okay, Xavier, amazing things. But he stops himself short. He said, I'm gonna stop right here before I compromise you all the way. Like I know that. Oh, let me rewind. I'm sorry. He asked her about her fiance, and he asked her, is it a love match? And she told him no. She was very honest, and she said no. She said, listen, I don't want love. I ain't looking for love. Love ain't never done nothing good by me or my people. And so I'm just looking for a companion. Me and him have a lot in common. We get along with each other, and that is it. That is all. And so he don't like that answer. He don't really, he thinks it's crazy. He's like, she don't even understand how beautiful love can be. But he stopped short of taking things further than where he took them. And they go to bed. And later on that night, he wakes her up. And because the cavalry has come to get him, the people he sent the wire to showed up. And we are introduced to Raymond Levesque. Now, Raymond Levesque is having his own book later on. So you guys can read more about Raymond Levesque and how he finds his wife. There's a sequel. And we learn all about Raymond Levesque and his family. I think that ends up being about 5 or 6 books right there.
I was like, we finally get some action, and he got to leave.
Right. And he apologized. He said, I told you I would never make you sad again, but unfortunately I am, because I gotta go. He said, but I'll be back. He said, but promise me when I come back, you'll pretend like you don't know me. And she was like, what? Okay, whatever. So how you guys feel about him having to leave?
I feel like, well, first, the fact that he stopped showed us then how much he really cared for Hester. Because based off, what we know for him in the past, if he didn't care for her, he wouldn't care about her innocence and wouldn't be like, okay, he would have took it.
That's true.
So that right there showed us that the way he felt for Hester was different from any other woman he felt in the past. But also, I felt sad for her when he had to leave because she felt like, I'm never going to see this man again.
Right. You really do feel bad. You really feel bad for him. Because they, like somebody just said, y'all let me turn my phone off. that they basically just sort of kind of got to a point where they are admitting they're attracted to each other, and he has to leave. Now that moment, let me tell y'all something again. For those of you who stopped at chapter 9, or y'all haven't read any more of Beverly Jenkins novels, the other thing about Beverly Jenkins, baby, she can write a love scene. Okay, this little bit that y'all got in chapter 7 ain't nothing. Y'all keep reading, because she know how to write a love scene. Okay, she can give you some history, but baby, she can write romance, and we'll get there as we read on, child. We'll get there as we read on. I thought he was going to be gone for a couple of years, and that when she came back, she'd be back. Yeah, that's true. You thought it would be longer than it was, because actually it was about 4 or 5 months. And she said, I used to dream about him. I had just sort of gotten him out of my dreams, and then word around town started buzzing that somebody had bought Lovejoy's Folly. And around that time, she also realized that she was broke, okay? That things had gotten really, really, really bad, to the point of no return, and she ended up having to sell some of her land. And so Lovejoy told her, listen, the guy who bought the house off of me is looking to buy some of that land because it accompanies the house. I'm going to give you the name of his agent and everything. And and so Andre Renault, again, another one who we'll hear more about Andre in other books if you continue to read through Beverly Jenkins' catalog. He shows up and he offers her 3 times the amount of what the land is worth. And in true Hester style, she tells him that is too much and she ain't going to accept it. And he looked at her like she was crazy.
Feels like if you don't take this money, because my boss is going to get on me if you don't sell this dang land for a high.
Because he already knew what was going to happen if he went back to Galen and was like, listen, bruh. She said no thank you, and what did y'all think about that? Like, did y'all think she was stupid? How'd y'all feel? Or in this, by now you're like, that's just who Hester is, like that is just Hester, child.
No, it made sense to me, because when you
never, she was crazy.
People giving you something for more than what it's worth usually means that you're gonna be somehow indebted to them. She doesn't know who this person is. She doesn't know their objectives. So why in the world would she put herself at a disadvantage with them?
Would you say you're going to pay on the front end or the back?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So she's like, I don't know who this is.
Right. And she didn't. At that time, she didn't know who it was. She was just like, I don't know who this person is offering me all this money. And so she ends up accepting double the amount instead of triple the amount. So she still got more than the land was worth. And as Andre walks out the door, he hands her an envelope. He said, this is from my employer. And it's a letter from Galen saying, thank you for the land. So now she knows that it's Galen. And she sees his signature seal, which is a dragon, which we'll see the dragons throughout the rest of the book. And so now she knows that it's Galen, right? And so a couple of days later, Andre shows up again, and now he has gifts, and she gives him a hard time. And he was like, ma'am, can you please just take these gifts? Please don't send me back to my boss. And you'd have told him, no, please, okay, please. And he done sent her the whole grocery store.
I have some food in here, some ham, some oranges,
right?
Some nightgowns.
Right. She didn't even see the nightgowns, but baby, the nightgowns were everything from, appropriate winter Michigan to damn near see-through. Why did you put it on? Okay. But of course, we know that is connected back to the whole, that's the ugliest nightgown I ever saw. So, and she told him, she said, I'm gonna give half this food away. What are you doing? Because remember, there weren't no deep freezers and stuff like we have today. Like, it's only been so long you're gonna keep that food any good. But she was able to feed her passengers because the weather was warming up and they were starting to move cargo again. And so, yeah, poor Andre, he had a hard time, child. He had a hard time. The other thing is she gets a letter from that daggone what's her name? What's her Foster, thank you. She gets a letter from Foster saying that he was gonna be at the train station, and because the mail moved so slow, it was the next day. So she goes to pick him up, child, in the mud. Okay, it takes her forever to go get him from the train station. Oh, before we get there, oh my gosh, one of my favorite scenes of the whole book. I almost forgot. She's in bed sleeping, and who is sitting in her room watching her sleep? Galen just snuck in the house through the hidden passages so that he can watch her sleep. Y'all, that's one of my favorite parts of the whole book. And watches her sleep, and wants to wake her up, but knows that he probably shouldn't wake her up. That's a good point below. That she's not impressed with his money. It was
reaching out to Xavier.
I thought it was cute. Oh my gosh, I thought it was so cute. And then he just left that rose. I thought it was cute.
It was cute because it was Galen.
Freaky.
It was only cute because it was Galen.
I guess that's true. Yeah. You're right. That's true. Because if it had been anybody else, you're right. It could have easily been something, a whole nother situation. All right. So she gets to the train station to pick up Foster, and child, Foster's talking about I got something to tell you.
I was pissed.
I said, this mother huncher.
Hester better than me.
Right.
The most ridiculous.
Well, it wasn't a love match, so what's the big deal? Girl.
I've ever read.
Oh, I was so mad. I was mad for her.
She still made sure they had a ride. I would have left them.
Yeah, I would have been like, I don't have no, I don't have none. I don't have no room. I don't have no room, ma'am.
Exactly. Nope. How dare you?
I was like, we don't have no room here. We don't have no room here.
Okay, I hope you don't feel bad about me taking your fiance.
Right. Then she told us, oh, I thought you was going to hate me.
Right.
Because she knew what was up.
She knew what the deal was. The other thing I missed too is we meet another character, Gail, who's a conductor, and we find out that Gail had a whole scandal in her history, child. Her husband was a bigamist, and she's ready to move out of that house. So she's thinking about moving to Whitaker. And she asked Hester, are there any homes? And Hester says, if you can stay with me, girl, you know, I got that house. You can come on, stay with me. I know you know what I do. You a conductor on the railroad. I'm a conductor, so I don't have to hide it from you. And you can come and you can stay with us. Stay with me, I should say. And then we find out her story. Now, again, Grayson's, what is it? Grayson's estate or Grayson's compound or something like that.
Grayson's Grove.
Grayson's Grove, thank you. Again, that's another spinoff. Beverly Jenkins has a couple of books from Grayson's Grove as well. So again, Indigo was her second book. So a lot of her novels are spun off of a lot of these characters, and then they continue to spin off and spin off and spin off. You can always tell when there's going to be a spinoff because then she'll say when somebody got a brother, it's going to always be another book. It's going to always be another book when they got a brother, because we as the fans are like, well, when you going to write the story for Raymond? When you going to write the story for this person? We want to see it. And so she just got to the point now where she just like, all right, here you go. And so on the way back, the mule refuses to move. I feel like the mule was probably like, you ain't shit and I ain't taking you back. Talking to Foster.
The mule had the spirit of her Aunt Catherine in it. She was like, I ain't writing these people back to wherever they need to
go. This man wants some other stuff. You know, no ma'am. And who comes to their rescue? She recognizes the coach from the night that they came to get Galen from her house. And who's driving the coach is Raymond Levesque, and he gives her the old wink and the don't say nothing. Remember, you ain't supposed to say nothing. And they end up giving them a ride back. There's a lot of colorism, Patty Duke. And there's a whole conversation in the carriage about Galen being mulatto and Jenny, Foster's her wife. Her being amazed that he did not want to live his life and pass. She said, a lot of, mulattoes, they choose to pass rather than, be treated as black. And it was a very tense moment. And it was a moment that they had to sort of get past. But Galen was offended for her to
Right.
even feel that way. Like offended, like why would you even think that I wouldn't want to be who I am, you know? And it was
And
a
how
moment.
would you just say that to somebody anyway?
Right. Well, it was definitely a moment. It was definitely a moment. He also invites them to dinner to his house. He lets them know he's just moved
Jenny
to
ain't the
town.
smartest in the bunch.
Huh?
Right. You
Yeah,
said
she
Jenny
ain't
isn't the
right.
smartest.
Yeah, she ain't that bright, child. She ain't that bright. And
Jenny ain't the smartest.
right, right. And later on that night, after they've dropped everybody off, he doubles back to check on her. He wants to make sure that she's okay. You know, he was like, listen, you know, you good? Like, that was kind of crazy. And she's honest with him. She said, yeah, I'm a little embarrassed, you know, but it wasn't a love match. And so it is what it is.
Ooh, that scene made me so mad.
Child, didn't it make you mad? Because I was like, he was so caught up that it was almost like he didn't even understand.
He couldn't have cared less.
He really didn't.
Yeah,
Do
he
I
didn't
think
care.
Do I think Forrest is light skinned? I don't know if I don't know how. I don't remember how he was described. I know he was described as being short and pudgy, but I don't remember his complexion.
I don't think they gave us.
Yeah, I don't think so. You know what? He may very well have been Patty Duke because we know that he's a teacher. He had gone over to Oxford, and that's not to say that dark skinned blacks didn't do those kinds of things, but he may very well have been light skinned. That's interesting.
Whatever complexion he was a grade A butthole.
Yes, he was.
And I wish he had a punched him.
Yep. And you're right, Below. There absolutely is. There was a great
asshole. That's what
novel that was written by Anne Rice, Feast for All Saints, that dealt with is it Jean de Calor down in Creole? I mean, down in Louisiana, that dealt with blacks who actually owned slaves and how they had that whole elitist society of Creoles and light-skinned white blacks. Like there was a whole. She wrote. It was a really, really good book. They made it into a movie, but the book was really, really good, and it got into all of those issues of colorism. And it's not just among the Creole, but I know the Creole was since Galen is Creole. I'm just addressing it from that way. That's true, Brandon. She didn't love him, but she deserved better. She deserved better. Any final thoughts? We're gonna so that's chapters 1 through 9. Any final thoughts? We don't want to get into no spoilers.
The Hester character I can relate to so much. She reminds me of me with her practicality, you know. And it's nice to see a heroine who isn't falling over herself, you know. And so it was refreshing. I like the book a lot.
Okay.
I think it's going to be interesting with the other. What was the other lady's name? The one who wants to move in? I can't think of it right now.
Gina. Gail.
I think that's going to be interesting when that happened, because when I was reading the book, because I never read this book before. When I was reading the book, I was like, okay, how is that going to work with her and Galen's situation?
Little romance. Yes. Reading to find out.
Keep her from getting corrupted.
Oh, I'm sorry, Patty Dugal. We'll get the kinks worked out. Little baby, I see you, baby, but we about to get off of here, honey. We'll get the kinks worked out because I want to hear what you have to say, Miss Patty Duke. So next Monday we'll do another one, and Monday is a holiday. Monday is actually President's Day, I believe. Isn't next Monday President's Day? I believe.
I don't.
I
think it is. So we may come on a little bit earlier on Monday because I'm off. But I'll do a poll and see what works, if we want to keep it at 5:00 or if it's going to work for everybody. And so next Monday we will be up to chapter, because we 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we'll be up to chapter 18 by Monday. So we'll do 9 more chapters this week. Those of you that are done, I'm sorry, y'all, that y'all have to wait, but it's all good. Right, Patty Duke. Gail has a story. See, absolutely she does. She absolutely does. And then we'll do the conclusion the week after that, the Monday after that. So this was perfect. The book fit perfectly into the month of February. So I will meet you guys back on the main channel at let's say 6:45. I got to eat my dinner, and I'll meet you guys over there in about 30 minutes. Where we are going to talk about some TV talks. And we're going to talk about a few little odds and ends. We'll talk about the Super Bowl and some things like that. But thank y'all for being here. We had a pretty good turnout for my first time. We were up to like 15 people. So that was really good. And I thank you for those of you who joined me up here. Xavier, people said they were glad to hear your voice. Now, I heard Xavier's voice over on stereo when we were hanging out on stereo for them couple of weeks. So I got to know Xavier's voice up there. And Miss Bab and Miss Moya.
Yes.
Moya gave some really good insight.
Thank you. So did you. So did everyone. So thank you for creating this. I really appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. And I appreciate you guys for coming up. I do. I'm having a good time. I think I have figured out what the second book is. I'm going to make that announcement I'll make that announcement next Monday. So people have enough time to get it. I'm going to have a backup book though, because the book I'm thinking about doing, I think I may have to do a backup. So I have to come up with the backup first, and then I'll make that announcement next Monday what the next book is going to be. But for those of you who came up, thank you. I will drop the link next week again. You don't have to show your face on screen, but I do just have to verify that it's a real person behind the screen, that I'm not going to get spammed or nothing other crazy things pop up. Yeah, I know what they be trying to do with the StreamYard. But you don't have to come on screen. So thank you guys, and I'll see y'all about 30 minutes over on the main channel, honey. Mwah! Talk to y'all.
Bye.